All right. So welcome to the Esoteric Study Club, the Masters and the Path by C.W. Leadbeater. The reason why we'll be studying this book is because it provides us the large picture, the big picture of our soul's evolution, of our soul's journey. As always, before we start, let's do an invocation. So please sit straight, maintain the right posture. Inhale and exhale slowly, and just prepare your aura for the information that's coming in. Inhale slowly, inhale deeply. I am that I am. I am not the body. I am not the emotions. I am not the thoughts. The emotions and the thoughts are the products of the soul. I am the soul. I am a spiritual being of divine intelligence, divine love, divine power. I am connected to my higher soul. I am one with my higher soul. I am that I am. I am one with the divine spark that is within me. I am a child of God. I am connected with God. I am one with God. Spiritually, there is only oneness. Inhale very slowly, very deeply. Take a deep breath. And with this awareness that I am the soul, we now invoke. I, the soul, invoke the Supreme God, Divine Father, Divine Mother, my spiritual teacher, Master Choa Kok Sui, Lord Mahaguruji Meling, to all the great ones, the holy gurus, holy masters, saints, archangels, holy angels, and spiritual helpers, to the angels of theosophy, the angels of love and wisdom, to the masters themselves, to my higher soul, to my guardian angels. Thank you for giving us an opportunity to gather together as a group and receive your blessings of divine light, divine love, divine power, divine healing, divine guidance, divine protection, for abundance, prosperity, and spirituality. Thank you for giving us this opportunity to gather together to become a better person and a better soul, and to use this knowledge to become a better person and a better soul. We thank you in full faith. Take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale slowly and deeply. And relax. So the question that we ask is, are you happy to be here? To being part of this session, part of a select group of understanding. What is this mission that we're talking about? What is this path? For this, we're going to start from a backward position. We're going to start with understanding what is the goal for everybody. What is the goal that we are talking about? And if you've attended any of the past sessions, you will be familiar with the various planes of theosophy. Let's talk a little bit about the theory, explain a bit of the practical, and go from there. You see, far above us is the splendor of our higher soul, of the divine spark, of all things spiritual. So since they are above us, it's worth our while, it's worth our time to lift our thoughts towards them and try to realize them a little, to understand them a little. When we have an understanding of the big picture, they show the goal before every one of us. So we get an understanding of who we are, why we are here, what we're supposed to do. Now, in general, we have an idea that yes, we are spiritual beings, we're spiritual people, and that we are supposed to evolve and help others. But we have this question within us. What is my specific purpose? What is my specific talent in helping people, in helping them understand, to evolve, to grow? Some of us are artistically gifted. Some of us are great speakers. Some of us have a knack for healing or medical sciences. How can we use these specific skills to help ourselves, our families, our loved ones, and everyone around? So when we are aware of the higher side of things, the clearer our sight of it, the swifter our progress and the steadier our progress. So show of hands, let me know in the chat. Has it been that you have been on the spiritual path? You've been on the spiritual path for some amount of time, not just 6 months or a year, but maybe more than a few years, and your life still faces some ups and downs, health issues, relationship issues, money issues, or a combination of all of these in various ways. So you're in the spiritual path, you do your spiritual practices, but you're still wondering, okay, why are things so unsteady? Why are things not going so well? If you face this, this is where it helps. So I would draw your attention towards this very old diagram. And I think this diagram is at least 100 years old by this time. And mind you, the language is from the books. So I apologize in advance if the language is not politically correct, or if it sounds like it's geared towards the male sex rather than the females, instead of it being inclusive. It's just taken from the book. As far as possible, I'll try to make it as neutral, gender neutral, and unbiased as possible. So please forgive me if there are any errors or lapses on my part, just trying to represent what the old ones, the ancient ones, put forward. So on the side, you see, is the plane called the Adi. Adi in Sanskrit, which is a very ancient Indian language, means first. So if you follow the columns over here, it shows the first stage, the second stage, and the third stage. Adi, in the first stage, it releases a portion of itself called the monad, from the first plane to the second plane, which is called the Anupadaka. From the Anupadaka plane, it sends another portion of itself down into what is known as the Atmic plane, where the word Atma comes from. From there, it sends itself down to the Buddhic plane, where Buddhi means intelligence and intuition, you might say. From there, it comes on to the mental plane, where we have some understanding, some knowledge of operations, where we have concrete thoughts, understanding thoughts. Lower down, we have the astral body, which we are more than familiar with, as we have emotions and stuff. And then finally, a physical body, which we hopefully control. Now, I assume by virtue of your presence over here, we're all equipped with a physical body and a functional astral and mental bodies, right? Now, if you look at the first column, it talks about Jack. Jack in this case is a dog. Okay, could be a cat, could be a horse, but the author chose a dog. And Jack has an astral body, but he belongs to what is called a group soul, which means his consciousness, his awareness is not his alone, it is shared with a larger group. Now, we've covered this in more detail in our past studies in the astral plane, mental plane, causal body, and so on. So I won't go into too much detail over here, but basically what happens is the energy from the top goes all the way down to the bottom over here. And then it starts making its way up back to the top, from the first stage to the second stage. And then eventually it goes to the third stage. And the third stage, if you look at the bottom, is primitive man. This means a soul that has finished its animal incarnations and is being born as a human being for the first time. And they have all these bodies which they are in control with, in control of, and gradually they make their journey up. So if I have to make the long story super duper short, your purpose here is to go from top to bottom, and then back from the bottom all the way to the top. We are somewhere in between, you, me, the whole of humanity. And it's because we're somewhere in between that there's this inherent instability, that we are sometimes super spiritual, sometimes we are kind of animalistic. We lose our temper. We have uncontrollable urges. We have a character which leads us into some sort of problems, into some sort of issues. And sometimes we're really spiritual, we're really helping people. We are definitely out there putting ourselves way out of our comfort zones to help people. By studying, by understanding what the path is, we will see what the goal is before every one of us, and the clearer our sight of it, the swifter and steadier will be our progress towards it, though we may not all hope to fulfill the ancient ideals in this and fly as an arrow to the mark. So basically the higher beings are saying, okay, here's the path, here's what you got to do. You might not reach your goal, but try anyway. So in the course of this very great progress, every person, every being will someday reach full consciousness on the highest of our planes, the divine plane, and will be conscious simultaneously at all levels of the Prakritic cosmic plane. Prakritic here means nature. So I want to pause here for a moment and sink and drink in what this first paragraph means. In the course of this great progress, every one of us will someday, they're very politically correct, huh? They said someday. They didn't say when, just someday. We will reach full consciousness of our highest planes, which means you, me, your family members, the people you love and the people you don't. Eventually, at some point, you will reach the stage of a Buddha and higher up until you are fully conscious of God. So at some point in the distant future, maybe near future for some of us, but for the rest of us, distant future, we will be fully God realized. So imagine how that feels. People pray to the Buddha, they have the Vesak festival. Well, one day people will be praying to you, but no sense in getting pride about it because we are not there yet. So in having in ourselves that power of the highest of the high, we will yet be able to comprehend and function at the very, very, very lowest plane where help is needed. So it doesn't matter if you're a Buddha or a great, great, great one, you still have to come back down and help us over here to have a decent life. That omnipotence and omnipresence surely awaits every one of us. And though this lower life may not be worth living for anything that we may gain from it ourselves, yet it is worth enduring as a necessary stage for the true life that lies before us. So in these three beautiful paragraphs, the author has said, we know that life sucks, we know that life is difficult, but there's a good life happening and it's a few million years away, so you might as well go through this life. It's worth it. I hope that sounds really encouraging. And so it ends with a prayer. And I would like for all of us, if possible, to kind of get into the spirit of things and say this prayer together. Okay, now you know I like to make my sessions practical. So if you know how to scan, would you please scan your spiritual cord? Would you please scan the size of your spiritual cord right now? And then we will, as a group, recite this together, and then we'll rescan again. So quickly scan. All right, that's good. And now I'm reciting it. Eye hath not seen, nor ear heard, neither hath it entered into heart of man to conceive the things which God hath prepared for them that love him. For the love of God, the wisdom of God, the power of God, and the glory of God pass all understanding, even as does his peace. Peace be to all beings. We'll say that once more. Eyes have not seen, nor have any ears heard, nor has it entered into the heart of humanity to conceive the things which God has prepared for them. Because the love of God, the wisdom of God, the power of God, and the glory of God surpass all understanding, even as does his peace. Peace to all beings. Once more. Eyes have not seen, nor ears heard, neither has it entered into the heart of humanity to conceive the things which God has prepared for them that love God. Because the love of God, the wisdom of God, the power of God, and the glory of God pass all understanding, even as does his peace. Peace be to all beings. Take a deep breath and exhale. Would you please let me know how your spiritual cord is feeling? How is it doing? There, larger, smaller? When we acknowledge the presence, the power of God, we will find that it increases. We don't have to instantly understand everything, but as you're writing in the chat, it's increased, it's bigger. Just by affirming the name of God and the fact that we're connected to God, our work, our connection becomes bigger. Now, let me ask you this question. We are on the path of spirituality, correct? Right. But our purpose is to connect with our higher soul. Now, sometimes we use the phrase soul and spirit interchangeably. We do that. Like, I'm a spiritual person, I'm connected to my higher soul, I'm into that. What is the difference between spirituality and the soul? Because if you're on the spiritual path, then if we are using the words interchangeably, we can say we are on the cellular path, We are a cellular person, if you want to be funny about it. But obviously, that doesn't sound right. We are on the spiritual path, not the cellular path. The thing is, the spirit, if you look at the diagram, is the monad, the divine spark. That is the spirit. There is a distinction between spirit, between soul. So you, the incarnated soul, you are journeying up to the higher soul. And your higher soul also is studying, working, trying to connect to the divine spark. So we're on the spiritual path because we are trying to connect to the divine spark, the highest of them all. And the job of the divine spark is to connect us to God. When that happens, we will reach that eventual end goal. So we are on the spiritual path, working up, trying to become better persons, better people. Right. And therefore, it makes sense for us to look at the goal, which even if we don't understand, we know that the love of God is there. And so we recite what is known as the great invocation. We're familiar with the great invocation. We've been chanting it, reciting it in many, many ways. But now, as the world is going into more and more crisis, geopolitical crisis, natural crisis, all sorts of other issues, it makes sense for us to do this great invocation and understand that the moment we recite these words, our spiritual connection increases in size. Therefore, a great amount of divine energy just funnels itself down, enters our system, and we are able to channel it to the respective places. Because when we really start to think about it, yes, we are blessing, say, a certain crisis that's happening in the world right now, and they're refugees. They are also being displaced and they have to go somewhere. Where will they stay? Where will they eat? How will they live? What about earning? So as regular people, we read of a crisis in the papers or on the internet, we raise our hands in blessing and say, blessings, blessings, blessings. Yes, yes, I'm a spiritual person, blessing, blessing, blessing. But then when your responsibility hits you, when that realization hits you that, okay, I'm blessing, but if I was in their space, if I was a refugee fleeing an invasion, where would I take my belongings? What about my things? Now, if you sit down, you look around, you're connected to the internet in an air-conditioned environment, comfortable physically, you have the time, all the luxuries, which you would take for granted. I'm sorry for being so blunt about it, but we do. And as a spiritual person, as people on the path of spirituality, it should spark something within us that, you know what? It's not enough to just raise the hand in blessing. We have to go out and make that change. We have to donate meals. We have to, maybe we can't go in person and travel and make the difference. We can't cook for them, but there are people on the front lines and we can help them. We can sponsor them. We can take care of them. So as Master Choa Sri, the founder of Pranic Healing, says, that spiritual people are not anemic, they are dynamic. They are always doing things. They're thinking, how can I take this problem and make it better? How can I solve it? Other people are like, okay, how can I take this problem and make it bigger? So that's probably not a good thing, but you want to take the problem and make it better. So the goal for all is to understand that from the point of light, which is in the mind of God, this light needs to go into the minds of every person and every being. This light needs to descend on earth, needs to cover earth. This intelligence is what the holy masters are working towards. And likewise, there's a point of love in the heart of God, and that love also needs to stream into the hearts of every person, every being. We can't just be sitting around and saying, I'm spiritual, I'm blessing. We need to go out and do things. And when we have this awareness, and when our hearts are moved, we don't just double tap a post on Instagram and say, oh, yes, suffering, double tap. Yes, I've given my like, I've done my duty. We have to go out and do things. That is where the center, where the will of God is known, and that purpose guides our little wills. It's called little wills because our willpower is really little compared to the great grand will of God. And that's the purpose which the holy masters know and serve. Because from the center, which you call the human race, this plan of love and light needs to work out. We need to know, we need to understand, and we need to serve. And when we do this, when we realize that, okay, if I am a being of light and I'm spiritually connected to God, then this person beside me, the person around me, They are equally connected to God. And so if I hurt them, I hurt myself. That's where the law of karma comes in. It's because the rule of oneness, the law of oneness exists, that the law of karma also exists. You can't, like, if your foot is in pain, you can't slap your foot and say, and the rest of my body won't get hurt. It doesn't work that way. It's all connected. So when we are aware of the love and light, and when this plan is working out, that's when it starts sealing the door where evil dwells. So then what is evil? We'll actually come to that. The nature of evil, the purpose of evil, why evil is somewhat necessary. We'll come to this in this book. And once that is worked out, let light, love, and power restore the plan on earth. Interesting? Not interesting? What do you think? So now we move into the introduction. And here I'm doing something a little different from the past sections. I'm giving you a broad view. Today's session, I'm giving you a large overview of this whole book. What are the things that we are going to be talking about, that we'll be studying? So when you know what the end goal is, you might be better equipped, your interest might be better served by reading certain sections. So the first thing that we're talking about is the existence of the masters, the general considerations that they have, and how various religions also talk about the existence of them. So in, say, Christianity, you have the mention of Master Jesus. In Hinduism, for example, there's example of so many holy masters, okay? Avatars, there are plenty of them, or great beings, the munis and the rishis and the great saints. Okay, it's in Christianity also, all the saints, the great ones. There's recent evidence. Now, of course, this recent evidence is more than 100 years old, but they're personal experiences of the people who've written the book, of the interviews, and how the masters have made their presences known. Okay, it talks about the evolution of life, which you already have an idea about, but I'll go into some more details over there. It'll talk about superhuman life. Okay, what do they do? What do they eat? Do they sleep? Short answer, no, they don't sleep. And do they eat? Well, they don't really need to, but they do. And then the brotherhood of the adepts. Why is it called the White Brotherhood? When we invoke the holy gurus, the holy masters and saints, and all the great ones, this particular line, the brotherhood of adepts, who are these great ones? Where are they? What do they do? How do they function? What responsibility? When I'm invoking for a certain task, who starts to help? If, for example, someone's out in the field as a medical person, then one of the holy masters will function and give their blessings. If someone is out there preparing food and they're praying, oh God, I hope this meal goes well, it's a different master probably who's coming in, whether it's for animals or humans or travel or whatever. There are divisions of labor, so to speak, in all of these situations. And eventually it talks about the powers of the adept. So I'm going to circle back to this later on, but then it goes into a very interesting thing called the physical bodies of the masters and what they look like, where they live. Many of them live in Tibet in a ravine. The house of the master Kuthumi. Okay, some of us know him by the name Master KH. Now, when I say we know him by the name Master KH, I mean because we've read the books where he's referred to as Master KH. It doesn't mean that we have him on WhatsApp. Okay, the master's activities, what all they do, the houses, literally the other houses where they live. And if you're familiar with the 7 rays, the first ray adepts, the second rays, and the other rays, what the perfect physical vehicles are, what borrowed vehicles are. And here we're not talking about cars, we're literally talking about students and disciples who are offering their physical bodies that the masters can utilize. Now, you might ask a question that, okay, if you're a holy master, if you're an ascended master, what do you need a physical body for anyway? And then if you have a physical body, why do you need to borrow someone else's body? That question actually follows. I will give you the short answer to this because it's a question which has been on my mind for a very long time. And I figured now is a good time to share. You see, the master's work is at the physical world. Their job is to influence humanity. They cannot do things for us because it's our job to take care of ourselves. They will not clean up our messes. We have to do that ourselves. But they can guide us that the right way to clean up the mess might not be to scoop it up with our hands, but maybe to use a dustpan. It's an allegory, but you get what I mean. Yeah. So the masters, since they have to function on the physical plane, since they have to function on the physical world, it makes sense that they can communicate with us faster, easier, if they have a physical body of their own. Like if the Holy Master says, hey, ABC, you need to do this work, and they don't have a physical body, we'll be just hearing it in the ether. And we might not be receptive. We might be sleeping, dreaming. We're just like, oh, I had a dream about Master KH, Master DK. How cool, how nice. And we just carry on with our world. But when there's a physical presence, when the Master makes their presence known and we are in that majesty, in the presence of that power, oh my God, can you imagine how much more effective that thing would be? And that is why I suspect, it's a theory on my part, is that when people gather together in a group physically, or maybe energetically as we've done here, and we have a single-minded purpose, that we are here to do this job, it attracts the attention of the higher beings, it attracts the energies of the higher beings, and they appear. So maybe we are in this group right now, we're talking about the physical bodies of the masters, and we've got the house of Master Kutumi. Maybe some of us are very good at scanning and we can scan these super duper subtle energies. Who knows? Maybe Master KH is energetically connecting to us. It'd be an interesting experiment, don't you think? So that would be chapter 2, talking about the physical bodies of the masters. And then chapter 3 talks about the way to the masters, the entrance to the path, this spiritual path, and the magnitude of the task, the importance of the work, and what are these ancient rules which guide us, which dictate our discipline, which if we follow, progress happens. Not easy, but happens. And if we don't, well. And then what kind of energy, what kind of connection we can get at the feet of the master. Here I will take a slight divergence and go into something which my Indian friends and colleagues will be familiar with. That in the Indian tradition, and of course this is also mentioned by Master Chokoksri in his book on Hinduism Revealed, and also I think Achieving Oneness with the Higher Soul. He talks about how in the Indian tradition, youngsters or younger people, they will kneel down, they will bend down and touch the feet of their elders. They will touch the feet of their elders to connect to them. Now, spiritually, the significance of this would be seen as, the aura, the aura of the foot, the lower part of the body, would be the dirtiest part of the aura. Now, by taking that energy from the teacher's foot and putting it on their head, they're sort of humbling themselves by saying that, oh, the energy at the foot of the teacher is much, much higher than the energy that I have in the most refined part of my body, which is the crown. So it's a humbling experience, and we have to remember and remind ourselves that in spite of all the stuff that we give ourselves credit for, there are still greater beings to whom we are but children. And that brings us to the disciples' attitude, the 3 doors that we have to walk through, the master's work. Okay, the 3 doors, if you followed our past study on the labors of Hercules, you would be aware of 12 of those doors and what they signify, which is of course an esoteric astrology kind of thing, where all the signs, the astrological signs are referred to. That's in our esoteric study club on Prana World for review if you want. And then you make that link. What is the link? And how is nobody ever overlooked? Which means that everyone, no matter how nasty or vicious or empty they might be, every one of us, lost soul or not, they will make their way up. And then in comes the responsibility of the teacher. The teacher is giving us the teachings, but what if we misuse it? We know that certain color pranas should not be used in certain paths, but sometimes because we're cheeky or lazy or maybe feeling mean, we do it. What is the karmic repercussion on the teacher when the student makes mistakes? So for those of us who are serious about our practices and sometimes we goof off, like, okay, you know what, I can do the meditation, no need to do the exercise. It's okay. What kind of an effect does it have on our aura? And what does it tell us about ourselves that we have not absorbed that teaching? And what is the karmic repercussion on the teacher that the student has decided to ignore the teaching? So the responsibility of the teacher kind of makes it feel a little more serious, doesn't it? Okay, everyone's very, very serious. Well, all right, the responsible teacher, therefore there are wrong ideas and the effect of the wrong ideas on us and on the work. Then the effect of meditation, Common occurrences, common problems. This is where many of us will find a lot of benefit. Chapter 3, this part, common hindrances, as we talk about the things, the obstacles which are affecting us. So whether you've been on the spiritual path for some time and you're still facing certain issues, what are the common obstacles and blockages which could be affecting you? And therefore, obviously follows what are the common solutions for these so-called common problems. And your devotion, how it must be full, thorough, and complete. Now, once you've made your way to the masters, you will be tested. There will be probation. Okay. The living image. Now, okay, I need to talk a little bit about this part, the living image. You see, when the higher beings, when our master, when our spiritual teacher is watching over us, it doesn't mean that he is literally 24/7 got a CCTV camera behind our back. He is not watching us when we are eating, sleeping, going to the bathroom. No, no. That is a very physical concept. What's happening is at the energy level, every time you produce a thought, every time you have an emotion or a desire, your aura flashes certain colors. Your aura changes. So if you followed our previous study sessions, say maybe on thought forms, maybe on invisible helpers, and even the last book, which was done by Hengame, Man, Visible and Invisible, where it talks about the invisible component of many of our thoughts and the evolution. So the master creates an image of us at the energy level. So when you have a nice devotional thought, when you have a nice spiritual bent of mind, your teacher, your spiritual teacher, can see that being reflected in your facsimile in the inner world. And the teacher will say, this person's doing well, and they'll send blessings. Conversely, if you're feeling upset, if you're feeling down, you're like, or words to that effect, the teacher can see that too. And do you think the teacher would want that kind of an energy in his office, in his space? Probably not. So the living image is when we are connected to the teacher energetically, very deeply, very properly. In fact, although we've not covered this book, if you read Autobiography for Yogi, there is a mention of this, of the student being in perpetual continuity and communication with the spiritual teacher. So with this living image thingy in mind, I propose an experiment, okay? Because, I love making practical. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you to think of your spiritual teacher, okay? For me, it's going to be Master Chokuksui, obviously, because without him, none of this would have been possible. So I'm going to close my eyes and I'm going to invoke to my spiritual teacher. I just visualize him in front of me. So you visualize your spiritual teacher. I'm visualizing Master Chua. I'm looking him in the eyes. I'm smiling at him with my eyes. Master Chua, thank you for your help, your guidance, your protection. I am immensely, immeasurably grateful to you. You have changed my life. You have given me purpose. You have given me a mission. You're teaching me, you're healing me, my family, my loved ones. My life would be horribly incomplete without you. And therefore, with you, with your blessings in my life, even though I've never met you, please know that I truly love you, I appreciate you, and I am grateful for your presence. I thank you. I thank you with all my faith, with all my love, with all my heart. I thank you. And I project this love to my teacher. I send this love happily, deeply. Inhale, exhale, cut the cord, return to your body. Would you please share your experience in the chat? How are you feeling? How it was? And perhaps you don't want to maybe write or talk because you are sensitive to the energy of the teacher flowing to you. So understand that when you radiate this love, this devotion to the teacher, it comes straight back, instantly, multiplied many, many, many times. So I'll just wait for some of the responses and just quickly take a sip of water. Mm. Right. As our living image stays in the office of the teacher, we are very young in this path. So what are the issues, the common issues which the young probationers face? What kind of problems can they go through? For example, what happens when we are cruel to children? Who is the master who's taking care of the children? And it doesn't necessarily mean physical children, could mean energetic ones as well. And when you enter upon probation, and what advice does the master give you? So therefore, this attitude of children is for us to become as little children, not to be childish, mind you, not to be childish and cranky, but to be childlike. And what does it mean to be childlike? Is to have a sense of curiosity, of wonder. Like children ask all these questions, right? Why is the sky blue? What do the sun rays smell of? Why is the ocean, why is water wet? When you spill water on a cloth or on a surface, why does it appear darker than everything else? But we are adults. We don't bother about such childish, childlike questions. We are bothered about income tax and earnings and purchases on Amazon and such like. So we need to become as little children and make our energies amenable to it. And what happens when we become irritable or annoyed? What happens in that case? Well, that is when we'll know about the effects of irritability, selfishness, worry. On the other hand, you also talk about laughter. Now, laughter could be a good thing, but sometimes it could be too much laughter for the sake of it. What happens when we say idle words? We're just indulging in gossip. What happens when we fuss over things? And what happens when we make speeches, and what kind of energy is generated? And how we can utilize that energy to change and impact our world. Now, you might be wondering, okay, what's the practical application of all of this? Well, it's like this. What is your self-talk? Suppose you're in a relationship, or maybe your relationship is rocky, or you've gotten out of a relationship. What is the self-talk that you are having with yourself? What kind of energy is your mental engine generating, and how is it fueling your life forward? Do you have good terms with your parents? Do you find that your friends are always annoying you? Do you find that there are issues in almost every person you interact with? Well, the issues might not be with them, but by that negative self-talk which you have generated, you've been programmed to generate in your mind over years and years. And so it's not your fault per se, although it might be a sore point for you, it might be a trigger for you, but it could well be the effect of many past carryovers, many past programmings, which is causing you to feel thusly. So the forms made by speech and the effect it has on you, all of that affects your progress and the issues you face in your life. Which then, the last point would be the value of association, as in what you get by associating with different people, spiritual people, and so on. Now, we come upon from there, what happens when the masters accept you? Someone will share the story of an accountant of an acceptance when they unite with the master. And what is the attitude of the disciple in such a situation? And when the master's spiritual energy comes forth, how is it distributed? How does the master communicate with you? The messages of transmission. And based on that, how do you become more sensitive? You become a medium or a channel for the communication, and you develop psychic powers of your own. Who wants psychic powers? Raise of hands. Yes or no? And then you get messages from the adepts. Okay, by the way, what is the difference between an arhat and an adept? We'll come to that. An arhat, by the way, is one step, I think, lower than that of an adept. So you're achieving oneness with your higher soul, you've achieved oneness with your higher soul, you've become an arhat, and now you need to practice until you can become an adept at it. Then goes into the personal equation, how you can test transmission of thoughts. I do not know whether you will be practicing telepathy, but it would certainly be an interesting experiment to try. Relaxation, like proper relaxation, calm and balance. The dark powers. What are the negative powers, the black magic that we can utilize? Or, well, that we should be aware of, that we should not utilize. Let's be more clear on that. And the certainty of success you get in that regard. Okay. Then there are other presentations. Again, it's not a PPT that the Holy Masters are making, but presentations in forms of how they present themselves into the world. So the whole brotherhood, the ways to the path. Then we talk about how it comes into from the Buddhist perspective, the Hindu perspective, mantras, which is a very interesting topic, the effect that you have that faith has on getting into your system, the association of thought, how the angels and higher beings come in, the effect of repetition. So it's not enough that you just chant a mantra once or you connect your teacher just once, but the effect of repeating it over and over single-mindedly with faith. Then the blessings, the power of sound. Now, this has been many sessions on this by itself, but this is a remarkable, remarkable topic that you can use sound energy to generate certain powers and abilities. For instance, if you've heard Master Choa Kok Sui chant Om Mani Padme Hum, you know that there's a certain mantra where it goes Om Mani Padme Hum. Sorry, I'm not doing it correctly, but you know how that chant goes, right? And then you've got the very popular chant of Om Mani Padme Hum, which goes like on YouTube, if you search for it, it's like Om Mani Padme Hum, Om Mani Padme Hum. You know the one I'm talking about. The two of them have entirely different effects, even though it's the same mantra connected to the same being. But the power of sound, the resonance, the frequency, the pitch, all of it has a very unique effect. And after doing all of that, we understand that the requirements never change and we're all supposed to just keep going. Then chapter 7, and mind you, this will be like halfway into the book, where we talk about the great initiations, the first initiation, the one who initiates the whole brotherhood, failures, and so on and so forth. Now, there are many levels of initiation. So if you're, for the ones who are curious, the first initiation is supposed to be when you acquire control over your physical body. The second is when you acquire control over your astral body, your emotions. The third, over the mental body. So I wouldn't be too wrong, I suppose, if I said that we are at some level at least second degree initiates, that we have some semblance of control over our emotions. Our thoughts still need some work. Of course, some of us are human beings, but we probably still are trying to have a first initiation because we just don't know how our body functions. And then anyway, the level of initiation, the present opportunity, young initiates, and the ones who take care of the whole thing. After that comes the ego. Now, when you say ego, it doesn't mean the pride wala ego. It means the higher soul. Okay, so higher soul, incarnated soul, divine spark. So you've got monad, you've got ego, and you've got personality. Personality, incarnated soul, ego, higher soul, monad, divine spark. So how the higher soul is born, the connection of the higher soul and the divine spark, how they communicate with the incarnated soul, how the higher soul functions in his own world, and the interest of the higher soul takes in the personality. So basically, your higher soul is interested in you, okay? And what is your attitude that you need to have for you to realize that you are connected to your higher soul? Which then brings us to the second and third initiations. What are the obstacles or the chains, okay? The ropes which bind you down. The steps, the subdivisions of the steps, some more stories, how the mental development happens, and what this danger point is before you can go into the third initiation. And then what are the fourth and fifth blockages and obstacles which hold you back. Then there are high initiations from the Arhat. You go into Christian symbology, you go into Nirvana, not the band. You go into the work of the Arhat, the fifth initiation, beyond adeptship, and what the 7 paths are. From there, you now get an idea that, all right, I've done my work as a soul. I am moving up, 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 and that's the whole hierarchy out there. And we understand what is the work of the masters, how they work, how they use the force, the energy, how it is utilized. And when devotion energy is generated, when devotion energy is created, how they use that. Now here there's a story of someone who shared this online. You know, when there's a match or a sport, some like there are hundreds and thousands of people in a stadium, and they're all cheering, and you know, there are 2 teams, people on either side, they're generating all that energy. They're putting all that, oh yeah, go, and words to that effect. I don't know about cheerleading, which are put out into the world. What happens to all that emotional energy which is generated? It goes out into the world. Where does it go? How can that energy be utilized? Some people, I'm just sharing this for your knowledge, please don't take it the wrong way. Some people, in order to manifest or materialize their wishes and desires, they will go to such public gatherings. They will gather up that spiritual, emotional energy over there, capture it, and use it to fulfill their purposes. Because, that energy is already out there. Why don't I just use it? So, very interesting chain of thought if you are inclined that way. Should you do it? We'll get to this when you come to chapter 11. So the work that is done by the pupils, the effort that they make, the various races, we know there are many root races and sub races. So we'll be talking about the 6th root race and the sub race, which will go into chapter 11, which, by the way, has already been covered in one of the first books, which is the solar system. So I won't be going into too much detail into this because we've already covered many study sessions on it. If you want, you can refer back to the past ones. Now we come into Chohans. Chohans here meaning leaders or the masters of the race. So who the masters are? Master DK, Holy Master Dhwajal Khul, what his table is like literally the physical table, the division, the 7 rays, the 7 spirits, the 7 types of beings. So you might ask that why does this number 7 keep reappearing? Like 7 colors, 7 notes, 7 rays, not just 7 chakras, but more than that. But why 7? So that part gets covered over here. Magic, not Harry Potter, but magic and healing powers. The Chohans and the rays and the qualities that we need to be developed in order to manifest that ray. Now, here's an interesting point. You see, someone might say, okay, I am ray 4. Okay, someone might say I'm ray 4. The objective of ray 4 is to harmonize conflicting factors. But I am always surrounded by conflict. People are always fighting and arguing. Okay, I am never in a position to solve the problems. It's because that you are ray 4 that you need to develop your ray 4 to be called ray 4. So it doesn't matter that, okay, say someone's a doctor. You don't go to medical college and just be given a certificate saying, you're now a doctor. You've got to treat cases on the field. You've got to slog day and night on 48-hour shifts. You've got to bear all these people crying and screaming and smacking you in the face and other parts and say, yes, I'm here to help you. As a doctor, sometimes your work is thankless. Patients can be aggressive. But you go through not just the theory part, you have to go through the practical part of it before you earn your stripes. You can't just be a theoretical doctor. You can't just move your hands in the air and say, yes, 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 you're taken care of. You've got to go out there and do the work. So what are the qualities that you need to develop? If you're a ray 2 person who has a lot of love, it doesn't mean that you will automatically be filled with love. You will be given situations where things are tough and difficult so that you can develop your loving quality. Likewise, if you are supposed to be ray 1, you might not think you're a natural leader, but circumstances will emerge where your leadership qualities and potential gets activated. So those are the qualities to be developed. So sometimes many of the issues you go through in life with respect to your rays and qualities are not just there because you are that ray, it's because you have to develop it. So then there's cycles and changes, what happens when there's more devotion and other ritualistic factors. From there, we go on to the Trinity, the Holy Trinity, like divine light, divine love, divine power. God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit, Brahma, Vishnu, Shiva, whatever it is. Okay, and this Trinity creating a triangle. And so what is the triangle of the agents? Who are these agents? Why do we need it? Because what are the limits of the rays? How can you change your rays? What happens when you go from ray 6 to becoming a ray 4 or a ray 2 or a Ray-Ban? Congratulations, you're now sunglasses because of so much light. And what happens when you get perfect unity? Then the wisdom in this triangle comes in, because then you talk about the Buddha, the other activities which come in, and the Vesak festival. So the Vesak is coming up sometime in March, April or May, sometime in May. And if you've been attending the Vesak festival at any point in time, you know that if you're in a group, that is, you know that you are seated in a triangular formation, in a formation of a group of 8 people, 9 people, 10 people, 12 people, so many more people. You sit in a circle or a triangle or other shapes. Why those shapes? Why do you connect certain chakras to other chakras? Why do you sit in that formation? that is when all this triangular energy, the spiritual significance of Vesak, becomes very clear. And then how the blessings come forth. Then you come on to understanding the Buddha. Who is the next Buddha who's coming? That's Maitreya. And then the festival of Asala, the Four Noble Truths. This is a very interesting festival, the Asala festival. We're part of a group back in 2011, which did the Asala festival. There are a lot of candles to be lit and beings to be invoked. Very interesting. And of course, we already know in Buddhism, the Four Noble Truths, the Noble Eightfold Path, and so forth. So from the wisdom in the triangles comes the power in the triangles. Who is the Lord of the world? What is the highest initiation? And what is the goal for all? So the goal for all is what I shared in the very beginning. This is actually from the last part of the book, but I put it out there in the very first part, that our purpose, our goal. To simplify it, as Master Choa Kok Sui succinctly said, your mission, your purpose is to grow up. Your mission, your purpose in life is to grow up. That is your goal. From thence, we go to Masters in the Path, Chapter 1. This is something we will be starting in some more detail on the next session. Now, as you can see, there are 15 chapters, and they go into a lot of detail. So we'll be skipping some portions, we'll be taking the more essential parts out. But what I want to share about, say, Chapter 1, which is the introduction, the presence of the masters, is that there's a lot of direct and recent evidence for the existence of these great ones. For those who are spiritually inclined, for those who do healings or those who read books, maybe you don't need any such direct evidence, because your studies, your experiences tell you that, yeah, there must be such people. That if there are people who are suffering, there must be people who are superhumans as well. So there's a considerable amount of personal testimony that people have shared. Now, it's sometimes said that the people who saw the masters, who witnessed them, they were dreaming. There was a flight of fancy. They were dreaming or deluded. And the main reason why this possibly happens is that we've never really seen the adepts at a time when both they and we were in our physical bodies. So in the physical world, physically seeing an adept is a kind of a rare thing. Okay, most people, many of us, if you've we covered this in the astral plane, I think, many of us habitually and constantly see these holy masters during our sleep. We go out in our astral bodies, or sometimes in the mental bodies according to our spiritual development, and we visit them and see them in their physical bodies. But at that time, we are not in our physical body. And that's why on the physical plane, people tend to be skeptical about such experiences. People object that in these cases, either you saw them when you were out of the physical body and you may have been dreaming, or those who appeared to you came as magic or some sort of fancy and then disappeared again. So how do you know that they were actually the holy masters? Now, in Chapter 1, in Masters and the Path, Bishop Leadbeater, he recalls that there are a few cases in which the adepts and the person who saw them were in the physical body. So if you've heard of Madame Blavatsky, she is one of the founders of the Theosophical Society. She lived for some time in a monastery in Nepal, where she physically saw 3 of the masters constantly in the physical body. And some of them have come down more than once from the mountains into the world in their physical bodies. Okay, Master Moria, one of them, Master Kotumi, another of them, who saw the masters physically, and their accounts which were written before. So Bishop Leadbeater, Charles Leadbeater, he recalls an experience where he saw on 2 occasions a master in the physical vehicle. Okay, he was studying in Adyar. Adyar is where the Theosophical Society in Chennai is located, and his teacher, Swami Subbarao, called him. So he listened to his teacher, went to his house, and after a long conversation, the adept materialized. Okay, they were met under ordinary circumstances without any previous appointment, just happened to be there. One example that Bishop Leadbeater talks about is when he was in Cairo in Egypt. Now, Bishop Leadbeater, they're from England, so they were on their way to India Bishop Leadbeater and Madame Blavatsky and some other people, and they stayed in Cairo for some time on their way to Tibet, to India. And they would all gather in Madame Blavatsky's room for some work, and Leadbeater was sitting on the floor, cutting out and arranging some articles. Now, she sat nearby, and they were seated in such a way that his left arm was touching her dress, the hem of the dress. The door of the room was fully visible in front of him, and the door didn't open. But quite suddenly, without any preparation, without anything, suddenly there was a man standing almost between him and Madame Blavatsky in physical touch. So he got really, jostled. He got scared. He jumped up. He was confused. And Madame Blavatsky, very amused, she said, "If you do not know enough to be startled at such a small thing, you'll not get far in this occult work." So here's a big, big thing. You see a holy master and you're so surprised, the holy master says, "You're too surprised. I don't think I can work with you." So don't be so excited. Balance the emotions. So at this time, he was introduced to the visitor who was not then an adept, but an arhat. An arhat is one grade below that of an adept. But since then, he's become a master, and he's known as the Holy Master Dhwajal Khul. Some months after that, Master Maurya came to them, visiting them in physical body, walking through the rooms, and he communicated with them in similar communications. So there are more such stories, more such accounts, which can be recalled, which can be talked about. They tell us that, okay, let's rewind a little bit. If there is an adept, what's one of the first questions? If a holy master came to you, stood in front of you, and you were able to control your excitement and shock, and you were to have a normal conversation with him, what would be one of the first questions that you would ask him? Normally, the question would be, how did you become a holy master? Were you born with that ability? Were you gifted? Did you do some practices? How? So in the course of our development, as they became able to communicate with the adepts, naturally, with respect, they've asked the question, how you went to that level. It's like people who are doing, say, certified pranic healing. You're doing pranic healing, they're doing pranic healing. You go and ask them, how did you become a certified pranic healer? And they'll tell you the same thing, which you already know, is that I studied, I sat for the tests, I did my case studies, I gave the interviews, ta-da, got the certificate. The Holy Master said the same thing, that not long ago, they were ordinary people like us, like you, like me. And they rose out of the ranks of ordinary humanity. And in time, we will be where they are now. The whole system, the whole divine plan, that entire great divine plan is a graded evolution of life extending up and up and up, further and further than we can follow, going all the way up to the universal supreme God. So we know from our studies that there are definite stages in the earlier evolution. There's the vegetable kingdom, so there's the mineral kingdom first, then the vegetable kingdom, then the animal kingdom, and then the human kingdom. So in the same way, the human kingdom also has a defined end, a boundary, at which point it passes into a situation where from human you become superhuman, superman. Whether there's a red cape or there's red underwear, that's entirely your personal fashion statement. But you extend into the superhuman. Now, in the study of the system of evolution, we've learned that there are many divisions, but there are three fundamental ones: the body, the soul, and the spirit. I spoke about this when I was introducing the chapter. Now, that's the definition which was given by St. Paul, Master Jesus, St. Paul, 2000 years ago. The spirit or monad is the breath of God, because the word spirit quite literally means breath, from the Latin word spiro. You know the word inspire and expire. So the spirit, the breath has come in, inspiration. The breath has gone out, expiration. Sorry, I lost my connection due to the internet. Now, we'll be concluding the chapter shortly. We're almost done. The word spiro, which means the spirit, your nature, your example. You are not the body. You are not the emotions, not the thoughts. You are quite literally the soul. Okay, and that is that realization which is hovering over us, which is floating over us. And this realization is in the space above us, and it will descend eventually into our system, and we will have a definite and achievable goal. The purpose of our life is to reach this state of realization that, okay, I am the soul, I am connected to my higher soul, and my higher soul needs to go back up to the spirit. So personality, higher soul, or incarnate soul, higher soul, and the divine spark. So now we will end the session, but before we do, I will ask you, take a deep breath. I am not the body, not the emotions or the thoughts, because I use this body to move about in the physical world. I use my emotions and my thoughts to operate and communicate in the physical world with other physical people. But my true essence is that of the soul. And I'm not just the soul, but I am that spirit, that spark, which is generating the higher soul. So I am that I am. I am one with this divine spark, which is within me. The divine spark created the mind. The divine spark created the emotions. It created a body for me to communicate. I am none of these things. I am this spark. And this spark is connected to God. It's one with God. Therefore, spiritually, I am connected and one with God. I am one spiritually with all. And this is the truth, regardless of the capacity of the brain to experience this truth. Take a deep breath. Inhale and exhale, slowly and deeply. Open your eyes with a big smile. From me, Orko, I, the soul, recognize the divinity within you, the soul, every one of you, in this session, watching the recording. We are on this spiritual path together. And we will be journeying forward higher and higher. To this, so be it. Let our days, our lives be blessed with light, love, and power, and may we journey on to the great divine path. Thank you, everyone, for joining in for today's session. Hope you found it useful. See you next week for the next few chapters as we move on to the path. Thank you for joining us. If you have any questions, please WhatsApp us on the group. Take care. See you next time. Atma Namaste.